Hey there, I'm Marie from DIY Montreal, and as many of you may know, my shop is out of commission, so shop projects are out of the picture, but sunny days are finally here, which means it's time for outdoor projects. So today I'm going to show you how I refinished my fence using a paint sprayer. Let's get to it. My fence was installed last year, so it still looks pretty great, but I want to apply a protective coat to keep it looking that way. Even though it's a relatively new fence, it still needs to be cleaned before applying stain, just like any fence does. With a closer look, you can see some watermarks and stains. But even if there weren't any visible stains, it's really important to first clean the fence. It's tempting to skip this step, but if you do, your new stain might look great at first, but it won't last very long. You can use a power washer, but I don't recommend it, as power washers can actually do more harm than good and tend to raise the wood fibers, leaving a rugged surface. Instead, I'm going to use a wood cleaner as per the manufacturer's recommendations. After hosing down the fence, I filled my paint sprayer halfway up with some water and filled the other half with this wood cleaner. I'll leave a link to the cleaner I used down below. I figured if I could use my sprayer for staining, I could certainly use it for cleaning too. I liberally applied the cleaning solution to the fence, not really concerned with the spray pattern at this point since my goal is just to flood the surface. As you can see, it goes on pretty fast. Now, I wasn't wearing a mask in this shot, but it wasn't long until I grabbed my respirator and my safety glasses. Even though this cleaner says it's biodegradable, it still contains an acid that can irritate the skin. After spraying one section of the fence, I used a stiff brush to scrub each board one by one. Now I must say this is probably the most tedious part of this entire project, but ultimately worth it if you want the stain to last. It's important to keep the fence wet during the cleaning process, so I washed one section at a time, fully rinsing off all the cleaner before moving on to the next section. Before moving on to staining, I let the fence fully dry for 48 hours, and at this point it's looking better already. Since the fence is in good condition, I'm using a water-based clear coat protective finish just to give it that weather protection without adding any color. I'm using my new Flexio 3000 sprayer by Wagner that comes ready to use right out of the box. You just need to fill the container and plug it in. This sprayer comes with a wide-angle spray nozzle specifically made for fences, so I'm looking forward to testing it out. I should mention at this point that any hardware, plants, adjacent structures, anything like that should be covered to protect them from the stain. Since I was using a clear coat, I threw caution to the wind and skipped that step. Now what's that expression, do as I say and not as I do? Anyhow, I started by coating all the vertical boards, before flipping the nozzle to the horizontal position and working on the horizontal boards. I worked the fence one section at a time, going with the direction of the grain, making sure to slightly overlap each pass. In the beginning, I had to adjust the spray settings a couple of times in order to dial it in just right, but really it's pretty intuitive. It only took me about a minute and a half to fully coat one fence panel. Once a panel was fully coated, I used a synthetic paintbrush to backbrush the stain into the fence. This helps the stain penetrate the wood rather than sitting on top and also avoids any runs. The stain dries really fast when sprayed on, so you really need to alternate between spraying and brushing while the stain is still wet. I worked my way across the fence like this, one panel at a time, until the fence was fully covered. You can already see the difference it makes after just one coat. So one thing I do want to point out is although I picked a clear coat finish to do my deck, it's not a deck. Okay, so one thing I do want to point out is although I picked a clear coat finish for my fence, they're not actually clear. They say they are, but they really have sort of a little tint to them, and they can vary from one bucket to another. And I actually ended up using two different ones because when I started out with one and I ran out, I had to switch over to another one. They both said clear, but the second one turned out kind of orangish, which I'm not too happy about. But anyways, they'll be protected from UV rays, and it'll look good for years to come. And I'll link both of these down in the description below. After letting the first coat dry for 2 hours, it's time for another refill for the second coat. And I got a little carried away and I made a boo-boo. I repeated the exact same application process as for the first coat, spraying one panel at a time and immediately back brushing the stain using a paintbrush. And that's it. When it's all done, it looks pretty great. But don't be fooled by what you see on TV. On the other side of this beautiful fence, here's what my backyard currently looks like. Did I mention I was in the middle of a major renovation process? Hey, I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, I'd love to have you, so be sure to hit that subscribe button. Until next time, thanks for watching, see you soon. Hey there.